Chapter 2. Computer Fonts and Hypertext. Learning Objectives. In this chapter, the users would learn the following aspects of computer fonts and hypertext. Usage of text in multimedia. Families and phases of fonts. Outline fonts. Bitmap fonts. International character sets and hypertext. Digital font techniques. Computer fonts and hypertext. Introduction. At the end of this session, you will be able to recognize the importance of word choice, describe the difference between a typeface and a font, and list at least 3 attributes of a font, discuss the importance of text and the ways in which text can be leveraged in multimedia presentations, discuss the presentation of text on Windows and Macintosh platforms, find sources for free and shareware fonts, define hypermedia, hypertext, links, anchors, and nodes, and be able to discuss both the potential and limitations of hypertext and hyperlinking systems. History of the written word. Using text and symbols for communication is a very recent human development that began about 6,000 years ago in the Mediterranean Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Sumeria, and Babylonia, when the first meaningful marks were scraped onto mud tablets and left to harden in the sun. The earliest messages delivered in written words typically contained information vital to the management of people, politics, and taxes. Because this new medium did not require rote memorization by frail human gray matter, written messages became popular among the elite. Today, text and the ability to read are doorways to power and knowledge. Reading and writing are expected and necessary skills within most modern cultures. Now, depending upon your proficiency with words, you may be awarded a doctorate. Text still delivers information that can have potent meaning. In the 15th century, when the church was a strong power throughout Europe, Johannes Gutenberg, a trained goldsmith from Mainz, Germany, invented movable type for printing presses. He used this new invention for the task of producing religious literature, indulgence slips, and the Holy Bible. Since the explosion of the Internet and the World Wide Web, text has become more important than ever. Indeed, the native language of the web is HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, originally designed to display simple text documents on computer screens with occasional graphic images thrown in as illustrations. We can surf the net in a medium much richer than the paper pages of a book. The social impact of this text-based medium on the way people access and use information will be profound as the web matures further. In contrast to today's television medium, which consists of sound and images with a few text headlines dumbed down to the level of a perceived lowest common denominator of passive audience, the web offers an active experience laden with enough choices to challenge even bright people. Power of meaning. Even a single word may be cloaked in many meanings, so as you begin working with text, it is important to cultivate accuracy and conciseness in the specific words you choose. In multimedia, these are the words that will appear in your titles, menus, and navigation aids, as well as in your narrative or content. Multimedia authors weave words, symbols, sounds, and images, and then blend text into the mix to create integrated tools and interfaces for acquiring, displaying, and disseminating messages and data. Close your eyes and listen to the text. What is the image that comes to your mind? Waves in the sea. Cry of a baby. Darkness in the night. Piercing owl sound. Now, open your eyes. Each of the previous sounds evoked an image in us. All these raw sensory messages are important only because of what they mean to you. Indeed, you alone know the words that will stop you dead in your tracks with anger, or better, soothe you seductively over a quiet dinner for two. These words have meaning. In the following, Which option will you more likely prefer? Go back or previous, quit or close, terrific or the answer was correct. Words and symbols in any form, spoken or written, are the most common system of communication. They deliver the most widely understood meaning to the greatest number of people, accurately and in detail. Because of this, they are vital elements of multimedia menus, navigation systems, keyword lists, and content. You will reward yourself and your users if you take the time to use excellent words. SMS and Twitter on text. Look at the image displayed. How many of these do you use each day? Are there any more that you use? What is their meaning? The most recent changes in English spelling have been driven by technology limits, as SMS, text messages, commonly used by social networking sites such as Twitter and Facebook to communicate and tweet, allow only about 160 characters per message, 140 bytes. As today's most pervasive method of human-to-human data communication, more than 3 billion texters worldwide sending trillions of short text messages from phone to phone each year. Users speaking many languages quickly developed word shortcuts to pack the most meaning into the fewest characters. Emoticons. Used to clarify meanings in text-based environments, are these shorthand shortcuts empowering our language? Or are they just transforming how we communicate? For example, you can be as blunt or brutal as possible, but if you follow it with a wink or a smiley, it plants tongue firmly in cheek. You get your digs in, but soften the blow. Is this playing into the development of a passive-aggressive culture, or at least a passive-aggressive written culture? Look at the tweet image. What do you understand? In under 140 characters, we can see several key points and also find a hyperlink to the source, but without proper sentence structure. Nevertheless, we can get meaning from this tweet. 1. 3% of newspaper reading is done online. 2. Site of a blog post on newspaper impressions for print or online. 3. Assumption is that readers see half of the pages. 4. Another assumption is that they read all the articles. And 5. Clay's quick analysis. With the arrival of MMS, Multimedia Messaging Service, which allows for 350,000 byte transmission, perhaps these shortcut spellings will fade away, but perhaps not. Families and faces of fonts. Basics. In the context of typography, a glyph is an elemental symbol within an agreed set of symbols intended to represent a readable character for the purposes of writing and thereby expressing thoughts, ideas, and concepts. As such, glyphs are considered to be unique marks that collectively add up to the spelling of a word or otherwise contribute to a specific meaning of what is written, with that meaning dependent on cultural and social usage. Every typeface is a collection of glyphs, each of which represents an individual letter, number, punctuation mark, or other symbol. The same glyph may be used for characters from different scripts. For example, Roman uppercase A looks the same as Cyrillic uppercase A and Greek uppercase alpha. There are typefaces tailored for special applications such as map making or astrology and mathematics. Fonts and typefaces. A typeface is a family of graphic characters that usually includes many types of sizes and styles. A font is a collection of characters of a single size and style belonging to a particular typeface family. Typical font styles are boldface and italic. Your computer software may add other attributes such as underlining and outlining of characters. Font. Starting with a little bit of history lesson, around the 15th century when printers hand-set type, they had to pull actual metal letters, numbers and symbols out of a giant box. This collection of characters was called a font. Typefaces. Typefaces describe the overall look of the characters contained within the font. You might have a box containing all the letters of New Gothic, box font of New Gothic Bold, and box font of New Gothic Light. Each box contains a font of New Gothic. Typeface is actually interchangeable with the term font family. Here you see a family of 3 twins, John Smith, Jack Smith, and Tom Smith. Each brother shares the same face, but the weights vary. One is slim, the other is rather rotund. Together the brothers make up the Smith family. Typographically, John, Jack, and Tom are each fonts, and together they make up the Smith typeface. Type sizes. Type sizes are usually expressed in points. 1 point is 0.0138 inch, or about 1/72 of an inch. The font size is the distance from the top of the capital letters to the bottom of the descenders in letters such as G and Y. Helvetica, Times, and Courier are typefaces. Times 12-point italic is a font. In the computer world, the term font is commonly used when typeface or face would be more correct. What are points? The point system is a standard unit of measurement of type. It originated centuries ago when points refer to the size of the metal body that accommodated each character. Since each size of a typeface had to be cut individually, point size was determined by the distance from the height of the tallest ascender to the tip of the longest descender, plus a wee bit more. Font size does not exactly describe the height or width of its characters. This is because the X height, the height of the lowercase letter x, of 2 fonts may vary, while the height of the capital letters of those fonts may be the same. Heading can be adjusted in most programs on both the Macintosh and the PC. Typically, you will find this fine-tuning adjustment in the text menu of the image editing programs or the paragraph menu of word processing programs, though this is not an official standard. Look at the figure on the screen. Are they of different point size or the same? Both these text showings, Bernhard Modern and Vectora, are set in 14/17 point. Notice how the differences in the size of the ascenders, descenders, and X heights help determine how big the type actually looks. With a font editing program like Fontographer from FontLab Limited or www.fontlab.com, adjustments can also be made along the horizontal axis of text. In this program, the character metrics of each character and the kerning of character pairs can be altered. Character metrics are the general measurements applied to individual characters. Kerning is the spacing between character pairs. The space between any 2 glyphs has 2 components: the space after the first glyph and the space before the second glyph. The spaces between glyphs are composed of the side bearings from each glyph pair. Each glyph has a left side bearing and a right side bearing. In the example the lowercase a of Open Sans, the right side bearing has a value of 166 units, and the left side bearing has a value of 94 units. Kerning is the adjustment of the spacing between specific character pairs. Common examples of character pairs where kerning is often needed to improve spacing would be WA caps, WA small, TOAV. In the examples, we can see that without kerning, the spacing between the letter pairs T, O, and VA are too wide, whereas with kerning, the spacing between these character pairs is much more balanced with the feel of spacing of the rest of the font. When working with PostScript, TrueType, and master fonts, but not bitmapped fonts, the metrics of a font can be altered to create interesting effects. For example, you can adjust the body width of each character from regular to condensed to expanded, as displayed in this example using the Sabon font. Cases. In centuries when type was set by hand, the type for a single font was always stored in 2 trays or cases. The upper tray held capital letters and the lower tray held the small letters. Today, capital letter is called uppercase and a small letter is called lowercase. The term uppercase or lowercase can be written as two consecutive words or alternatively connected with a hyphen, upper hyphen case or lower hyphen case, or as a single word, uppercase or lowercase. These terms originated from the common layouts of shallow drawers called type cases used to hold the movable type for letterpress printing. Traditionally, the capital letters were stored in a separate case that was located above the case that held the small letters. Capitalization is the writing of a word with its first letter in uppercase and the remaining letters in lowercase. Capitalization rules vary by language and are often quite complex, but in most modern languages that have capitalization, the first letter of every sentence is capitalized, as are all proper nouns. Other languages vary in their use of capitals. For example, in German, the first letter of all nouns is capitalized. This was previously common in English as well. While in Roman and most other European languages, the names of days of the week, months of the year, and adjectives of nationality, religion, and so on generally begin with a lowercase letter. In some situations, such as for passwords, a computer is case-sensitive, meaning that the text's upper and lowercase letters must match exactly to be recognized. But nowadays, in most situations requiring keyboard input, all computers recognize both the upper and lowercase forms of a character to be the same. In that manner, the computer is said to be case insensitive. Do http://www.timestream.com/info/people/biote/biote1.html and http://www.timestream.com/info/people/biote/biote1.html point to the same file and directory? No, they are not the same, as the URLs of web are case-sensitive. Intercap. Placing an uppercase letter in the middle of a word, called an intercap, is a trend that emerged from the computer programming community, where coders discovered they could better recognize the words they used for variables and commands when the words were lowercase but intercapped. Serif and sans serif. In typography, a serif is a small line attached to the end of a stroke in a letter or symbol, such as when handwriting is separated into distinct units for a typewriter or typesetter. A typeface with serifs is called a serif typeface or serifed typeface. A typeface without serifs is called sans serif or sans-serif from the French sans, meaning without. Some typography sources refer to sans serif typefaces as grotesque, in German grotesque, or Gothic, and serif typefaces as Roman. Serifs are semi-structural details or small decorative flourishes on the ends of some of the strokes that make up letters and symbols. An example would be the Times New Roman font. Designing with text. Computer screens provide a very small workspace for developing complex ideas. At some time or another, you will need to deliver high-impact or concise text messages on the computer screen in as condensed a form as possible. From a design perspective, your choice of font size and the number of headlines you place on a particular screen must be related both to the complexity of your message and to its venue. In the next 4 screens, we will see the broad guidelines. Choosing text fonts. Dress for the occasion. For better or for worse, picking a typeface is more like getting dressed in the morning. Just as with clothing, there is a distinction between typefaces that are expressive and stylish versus those that are useful and appropriate to many situations, and our job is to try to find the right balance for the occasion. Know your families. Grouping fonts. The clothing analogy gives us a good idea of what kind of closet we need to put together. The next challenge is to develop some kind of structure by which we can mentally categorize the different typefaces we run across. Typefaces can be divided and subdivided into dozens of categories. Scotch modern, anybody? But we only really need to keep track of 5 groups to establish a working understanding of the majority of type being used in the present-day landscape. Don't be a wimp, the principle of decisive contrast. So now that we know our families and some classic examples of each, we need to decide how to mix and match, and most importantly, whether to mix and match at all. Most of the time, one typeface will do, especially if it's one of our workhorses with many different weights that work together. If we reach a point where we want to add a second face to the mix, it's always good to observe this simple rule. Keep it exactly the same, or change it a lot. Avoid wimpy, incremental variations. There are no rules. Really. Look hard enough and you will find a dazzling-looking menu set entirely in a hard-to-read display font, or of 2 different geometric sans faces living happily together on a page. In fact, just this week I wound up trying this on a project and was surprised to find that it hit the spot. There are only conventions, no ironclad rules about how to use type, just as there are no rules about how we should dress in the morning. It's worth trying everything just to see what happens. Installed fonts. Before you can use a font, it must be recognized by the computer's operating system. If you want to use fonts other than those installed with your basic operating system, you will need to install them. When you install applications, fonts are often added to your collection. There are several different types of fonts that make up the majority of the fonts found today. The 3 main types are OpenType fonts, TrueType fonts, and PostScript or Type 1 fonts. One more classification. Most typefaces can be classified into one of 4 basic groups: those with serifs, those without serifs, scripts, and decorative styles. HTML or Hypertext Markup Language. HTML or Hypertext Markup Language is a standard markup language used to create web pages. HTML is written in the form of HTML elements consisting of tags enclosed in angle brackets, like angle brackets HTML. HTML tags most commonly come in pairs like H1 and /H1, although some tags represent empty elements and so are unpaired. For example, IMG. The first tag in a pair is the start tag, and the second tag is the end tag. They are also called opening tags and closing tags. The purpose of a web browser is to read HTML documents and compose them into visible or audible web pages. The browser does not display the HTML tags, but uses the tags to interpret the content of the page. HTML describes the structure of a website semantically, along with cues for presentation, making it a markup language rather than a programming language. HTML elements form the building blocks of all websites. HTML allows images and objects to be embedded and can be used to create interactive forms. It provides a means to create structured documents by denoting structural semantics for text such as headings, paragraphs, lists, links, codes, and other items. In HTML and XHTML, a font face or font family is a typeface that will be applied by a web browser to some text. The font is relevant for the display of text on the screen, on a printer, or another device. Purpose of CSS. The purpose of CSS is to provide web developers with a standard way to define, apply, and manage sets of style characteristics. CSS provides these capabilities through a technical model based on a hierarchical scope of effect, the separation of style from content, and a well-defined set of published standards. Cascading. In cascading style sheets refers to how property values are applied in the context of the parent-child hierarchy of the web document. The child elements either inherit or override property values bound to their parent elements. A style sheet is the encapsulation of style rules in a centralized location, either in the head section of the HTML document or in a separate linked file. The web browser reads these styles and applies the specified formatting rules before displaying the content. Inheritance. For most styles, if a value of a style property has not been specified for a child element, but has been specified for its parent element, then the parent's value is used to display the element. On the other hand, if the child element does specify a new value for a style property also specified for the parent, the browser uses the child's value to display the element. For example, a web developer might specify a particular font family as a default for all textual elements in the page using the following CSS code. In the absence of any other instructions, the browser will display all textual elements using the Verdana font. However, the web developer might want to display headings using an alternative font. The following code illustrates binding the Verdana font family to all textual elements in the document, but overriding them with the impact font family for heading elements. Now the browser will display all heading elements using the impact font, while other elements in the web document will continue to be displayed using Verdana. Next, suppose that the web developer wants to emphasize portions of the document content by displaying them in an even heavier font and using red text. To do so, the developer can bind a style to a class, which will override the style bound as a default, as well as a style bound to the element, as shown in the following code. Now heading elements will be displayed using the impact font, while other elements will be displayed using Verdana. However, document elements of any type that contain a class attribute with the value important will be displayed using the Arial black font and in the color red. That means that if a heading element is of the important class, the style bound to the class will apply and it will be displayed in red using the Arial black font. Separating style from content. The primary benefit of CSS is the separation of style and content. It is difficult to separate content and formatting rules in pure HTML documents, but with CSS it is easy. The capability to separate style from content empowers developers to create, use, and maintain standardized presentation rules without touching the content. As a result, content authors can easily apply standard, professionally developed styles to newly published content without having to learn markup and formatting languages. Styles can target a variety of presentation contexts, not just web browsers. For example, the same content files can serve users accessing web documents from personal computers, handheld computing devices, and even cell phones. The web application could simply select and apply the appropriate styles sheet for the client at runtime. Separating style from content also makes code maintenance and reuse easier. HTML documents that use native tags and attributes to control font, positioning, and other characteristics of layout tend to be complex, making maintenance and code reuse more difficult. What is the difference between CSS and HTML? HTML is used to structure content. CSS is used for formatting structured content. In early days, HTML was only used to add structure to text. An author could mark his text by stating, "This is a headline," or "This is a paragraph," using HTML tags such as H1 and P. As the web gained popularity, designers started looking for possibilities to add layout to online documents. To meet this demand, the browser producers, at that time Netscape and Microsoft, invented new HTML tags such as, for example, font, which differed from the original HTML tags by defining layout and not structure. This also led to a situation where original structure tags such as table were increasingly being misused to lay out pages instead of adding structure to text. Many new layout tags such as blink were only supported by one type of browser. "You need browser X to view this page" became a common disclaimer on websites. CSS was invented to remedy the situation by providing web designers with sophisticated layout opportunities supported by all browsers. At the same time, separation of the presentation style of documents from the content of documents makes site maintenance a lot easier. Character sets. A character encoding system consists of a code that pairs each character from a given repertoire with something else, such as bit pattern, sequence of natural numbers, octets, or electrical pulses, in order to facilitate the transmission of data. generally numbers or text, through telecommunication networks or for data storage. Other terms such as character set, character map, code set, and code page are used almost interchangeably, but these terms have related but distinct meanings described below. Each character code associated with the optical or electrical telegraph could only represent a subset of the characters used in written language, sometimes restricted to uppercase letters, numerals, and some punctuation only. The low cost of digital representation of data in modern computer systems allows more elaborate character codes, such as Unicode, which represent more of the characters used in many written languages. Character encoding using internationally accepted standards permits worldwide interchange of text in electronic form. Early binary repertoires include Bacon's cipher, Braille, International Maritime Signal Flags, and the 4-digit encoding of Chinese characters for a Chinese telegraph code. Common examples of character encoding systems include Morse code, the Baudot code, the American Standard Code for Information Interchange, and Unicode. History. Morse code was introduced in the 1840s and is used to encode each letter of the Latin alphabet, each Arabic numeral, and some other characters via a series of long and short presses of a telegraph key. Representations of characters encoded using Morse code varied in length. The Baudot code, a 5-bit encoding, was created by Emil Baudot in 1870, patented in 1874, modified by Donald Murray in 1901, and standardized by CCITT as International Telegraph Alphabet Number 2, ITA2, in 1930. Field data, a 6 or 7-bit code, was introduced by the U.S. Army Signal Corps in the late 1950s. IBM's binary coded decimal, abbreviated BCD, was a 6-bit encoding scheme used by IBM as early as 1959 in their 1401, 1620, and the 7000 series. For example, 704, 7040, 709, and 7090, and peripherals. It extended existing simple 4-bit numeric encoding to include alphabetic and special characters, easily mapping to punch card encoding already in widespread use. It was a precursor to EBCDIC. IBM's Extended Binary Code Decimal Interchange Code, usually abbreviated EBCDIC, is an 8-bit encoding system developed in 1963. The limitations of such sets soon became apparent, and a number of ad hoc methods were developed to extend them. The need to support more writing systems for different languages, including the CJK family of East Asian scripts, required support for a far larger number of characters and demanded a systematic approach to character encoding rather than the previous ad hoc approaches. Why do we need Unicode? Unicode ISO 10646 is a one-size-fits-all character encoding standard designed to clean up the mess of dozens of mutually incompatible ASCII extensions and special encodings, and to allow the computer interchange of text in any of the world's writing systems. Unicode is a computing industry standard for the consistent encoding, representation, and handling of text expressed in most of the world's writing systems. The Unicode standard contains a repertoire of more than 110,000 characters, covering 100 scripts and various symbols. The standard consists of a set of code charts for visual reference, an encoding method, and a set of standard character encodings, a set of reference data computer files, and a number of related items, such as character properties, rules for normalization, decomposition, collation, rendering, and bidirectional display order, for the correct display of text contained both right-to-left scripts, such as Arabic and Hebrew, and left-to-right scripts. The standard is maintained by the Unicode Consortium. Hypertext. Multimedia, the combination of text, graphic, and audio elements into a single collection or presentation, becomes interactive multimedia when you give the user some control over what information is viewed and when it is viewed. Interactive multimedia becomes hypermedia when its designer provides a structure of linked elements through which a user can navigate and interact. When words are keyed or indexed to other words, you have a hypertext system. The text part of the terms represents the project's content and meaning rather than the graphical presentation of the text. Hypertext is what the World Wide Web is all about. When text is stored in a computer instead of on printed pages, the computer's powerful processing capabilities can be applied to make the text more accessible and meaningful. The text can then be called hypertext because the words, sections, and thoughts are linked. The user can navigate through text in a non-linear way, quickly and intuitively. Because hypertext is the organized cross-linking of words, not only to other words, but also to associated images, video clips, sounds, and other exhibits, hypertext often becomes simply an additional feature within an overall multimedia design. The term hyper from the Greek word over has come to imply that user interaction is a critical part of the design, whether for text browsing or for the multimedia project as a whole. When interaction and cross-linking is then added to multimedia, and the navigation system is non-linear, multimedia becomes hypermedia. Hypermedia structures. Two buzzwords used often in hypertext systems are link and node. Links are connections between the conceptual elements, that is, the nodes which may consist of text, graphics, sounds, or related information in the knowledge base. Navigating hypermedia. The simplest way to navigate hypermedia structures is via buttons that let you access linked information, text, graphics, and sounds that is contained at the nodes. Hypermedia development tools. Hypermedia may be developed a number of ways. Any programming tool can be used to write programs that link data from internal variables and nodes for external data files. Multimedia development software such as Adobe Flash, Adobe Director, Macromedia Authorware, and Matchware Mediator may be used to create standalone hypermedia applications with emphasis on entertainment content. Some database software such as Visual Fox Pro and FileMaker Developer may be used to develop standalone hypermedia applications with emphasis on educational and business content management. Static, dynamic hypertext. Hypertext can exist on the web as either static or dynamic content. Static hypertext documents are prepared in advance and stored, while the dynamic hypertext changes based on the user inputs. Difference between hypertext and hypermedia. Hypertext is the electronic text format where content is interconnected using hyperlinks, while hypermedia refers to media such as text, audio, graphics, and video interconnected using hyperlinks. Hypertext is a subset of hypermedia. HTML or XML-like language has to be used for any hypermedia implementation, including hypertext too. Finally, to make your text look pretty, you need a toolbox full of fonts and special graphics applications that can stretch, shade, shadow, color, and anti-alias your words into real artwork. Pretty text is typically found in bitmap drawings where characters have been tweaked, manipulated, and blended into a graphic image. With the proper tools and a creative mind, you can create endless variations on plain old type, and you not only choose but also customize the styles that will fit with your design needs. Most image editing and painting applications let you make text using the fonts available in your system. You can colorize the text, stretch, squeeze, and rotate it, and you can filter it through various plugins to generate wild graphic results. As a multimedia developer, you may only need to be concerned about how your fonts look on monitors. The most important aspect is a creative mind. Importance of word choice. With the recent explosion of the Internet and the World Wide Web, text has become more important than ever. Words and symbols in any form, spoken or written, are the most common system of communication. It is important to design labels for title screens, menus, and buttons using words that have the most precise and powerful meanings to express what you need to say. Experiment with the words you plan to use by letting others try them. Recap. Difference between a typeface and a font. A typeface is a family of graphic characters that usually includes many type sizes and styles. Serif versus sans serif is the simplest way to categorize a typeface. A font is a collection of characters of a single size and style belonging to a particular typeface family. How important is text? Size, color, background color, style, and heading are factors that affect the legibility of text. You must strike a balance between too little text on a screen and too much text. When a hypermedia project includes large amounts of text or symbolic content, this content can be indexed and its elements then linked together to afford rapid electronic retrieval of the associated information. When words are keyed or indexed to other words, you have a hypertext system. Hypertext. Multimedia, the combination of text, graphic, and audio elements into a single collection or presentation, becomes interactive multimedia when you give the user some control over what information is viewed and when it is viewed. Interactive multimedia becomes hypermedia when its designer provides a structure of linked elements through which a user can navigate and interact. When words are keyed or indexed to other words, you have a hypertext system. The text part of the terms represents the project's content and meaning rather than the graphical presentation of the text. Hypertext is what the World Wide Web is all about. When text is stored in a computer instead of on printed pages, the computer's powerful processing capabilities can be applied to make the text more accessible and meaningful. The text can then be called hypertext because the words, sections, and thoughts are linked. The user can navigate through text in a non-linear way, quickly and intuitively. Because hypertext is the organized cross-linking of words, not only to other words, but also to associated images, video clips, sounds, and other exhibits, hypertext often becomes simply an additional feature within an overall multimedia design. The term hyper from the Greek word over has come to imply that user interaction is a critical part of the design, whether for text browsing or for the multimedia project as a whole. When interaction and cross-linking is then added to multimedia, and the navigation system is non-linear, multimedia becomes hypermedia. Hypermedia structures. Two buzzwords used often in hypertext systems are link and node. Links are connections between the conceptual elements, that is, the nodes which may consist of text, graphics, sounds, or related information in the knowledge base. Navigating hypermedia. The simplest way to navigate hypermedia structures is via buttons that let you access linked information, text, graphics, and sounds that is contained at the nodes. Hypermedia development tools. Hypermedia may be developed a number of ways. Any programming tool can be used to write programs that link data from internal variables and nodes for external data files. Multimedia development software such as Adobe Flash, Adobe Director, Macromedia Authorware, and Matchware Mediator may be used to create standalone hypermedia applications with emphasis on entertainment content. Some database software such as Visual Fox Pro and FileMaker Developer may be used to develop standalone hypermedia applications with emphasis on educational and business content management. Static, dynamic hypertext. Hypertext can exist on the web as either static or dynamic content. Static hypertext documents are prepared in advance and stored, while the dynamic hypertext changes based on the user inputs. Difference between hypertext and hypermedia. Hypertext is the electronic text format where content is interconnected using hyperlinks, while hypermedia refers to media such as text, audio, graphics, and video interconnected using hyperlinks. Hypertext is a subset of hypermedia. HTML or XML-like language has to be used for any hypermedia implementation, including Hypertext 2. Finally, to make your text look pretty, you need a toolbox full of fonts and special graphics applications that can stretch, shade, shadow, color, and anti-alias your words into real artwork. Pretty text is typically found in bitmap drawings where characters have been tweaked, manipulated, and blended into a graphic image. With the proper tools and a creative mind, you can create endless variations on plain old type, and you not only choose but also customize the styles that will fit with your design needs. Most image editing and painting applications let you make text using the fonts available in your system. You can colorize the text, stretch, squeeze, and rotate it, and you can filter it through various plugins to generate wild graphic results. As a multimedia developer, you may only need to be concerned about how your fonts look on monitors. The most important aspect is a creative mind. Importance of word choice. With the recent explosion of the Internet and the World Wide Web, text has become more important than ever. Words and symbols in any form, spoken or written, are the most common system of communication. It is important to design labels for title screens, menus, and buttons using words that have the most precise and powerful meanings to express what you need to say. Experiment with the words you plan to use by letting others try them. Recap. Difference between a typeface and a font. A typeface is a family of graphic characters that usually includes many type sizes and styles. Serif versus sans serif is the simplest way to categorize a typeface. A font is a collection of characters of a single size and style belonging to a particular typeface family. How important is text? Size, color, background color, style, and heading are factors that affect the legibility of text. You must strike a balance between too little text on a screen and too much text. When a hypermedia project includes large amounts of text or symbolic content, this content can be indexed and its elements then linked together to afford rapid electronic retrieval of the associated information. When words are keyed or indexed to other words, you have a hypertext system. Conclusion. In this chapter, the users have covered the following aspects of computer fonts and hypertext. Usage of text in multimedia, families and faces of fonts, outline fonts, bitmap fonts, international character sets and hypertext, digital font techniques.